My name is Tilly Rastelato, and this is the story of Anne Boleyn, King Henry VIII's second wife, not the monster created by her enemies, but the woman who helped bring about the English Reformation, the woman who gave birth to one of the most powerful queens of the British monarchy, and the woman who changed history forever. Anne's childhood was spent here at Hever Castle. Her impact and her essence courses all through these grounds, from her bedroom to her actual Book of Hours kept safe here at the castle. Anne Boleyn was born around 1501 to 1507 to Thomas and Elizabeth Boleyn. She had 4 siblings, Mary, George, and her 2 brothers that died young. It is known that Anne spent the majority of her youth in the French court, where she was taught French and became familiar with the power that a woman could wield near the throne, which came in handy. Here at Hever Castle is where Anne Boleyn's Book of Hours is kept safe. What is the Book of Hours, you may ask? Well, it is Anne Boleyn's personalised prayer book with her handwritten inscription, "Remember me when you do pray, that hope doth lead from day to day, Anne Boleyn." She most likely took her Book of Hours all the way to her execution in 1536. But Tilly, Henry VIII tried to destroy everything of Anne's. How did these books end up at Hever? Well, they were passed down for decades through trusted family connections, mostly women that were loyal to Anne. Now I'm standing in what would have been Thomas and Elizabeth Boleyn's bedroom, and likely where Anne herself slept after her return from France. How cool is that? This is also possibly where she stayed when recovering from the sweating sickness in 1528. Before her marriage to Henry, Anne had met Henry Percy, Cardinal Wolsey's servant. They seemed to grow very affectionate for each other, and Anne thought she'd found her one true love and that she would get her happy ending, until Wolsey found out and was quick to tear the young couple apart. Anne met Henry VIII in 1522, but her interest in him didn't begin until 1526, and she was courted by him for roughly 7 years before their marriage in January of 1533. The wait was caused by the long political and religious process of Henry trying to annul his marriage to Catherine of Aragon. This is where Anne's influence to the English Reformation began. She drove Henry to break from the Catholic Church in Rome and form what is now the Church of England. After her marriage to Henry VIII, it was now time for her coronation, which took place on June 1st, 1533. Anne was already pregnant with Queen Elizabeth I at the time. She was crowned at Westminster Abbey and stayed in the Queen's apartments here at the Tower of London. These apartments since then have now been demolished, but on the green, as you can see, is where they would have once been. After giving birth to a girl, Elizabeth I, after Henry and Anne were both expecting a boy, an heir to the throne, all hope was not lost. Although we will never know for sure, it's thought that Anne had 1 or 2 miscarriages or even stillbirths after the birth of Elizabeth I.
My name's Peter. I'm a room steward here at Hever, and before that I was a shipping litigator. Anne was really a country girl. She wasn't the sophisticated courtier that she grew up to be. Then she went off to France, where she lived in the household of Queen Claude of France, where she learnt the ways of courtly love, and also, by the way, became screamingly well educated, which was very unusual for a girl in those days. So Anne really is remarkable in that she rose from not nothing, but she rose from obscurity, and driven only by 2 things. One was her eyes. She'd walk in a room, the men would all love her, and the women would all hate her. She wanted to make a mark. She wanted to found a dynasty for her family and for her country. In that, more or less, she did okay. I mean, she gave birth to Elizabeth, who, despite being a mere girl, by the way, one of the best monarchs we have had. So yeah, I think she'd be pretty proud of being how people tend to think of her now.
Since Anne was failing to produce Henry with a male heir, Thomas Cromwell had to find a way to get rid of Anne because Henry was becoming impatient and had quickly caught eyes for Jane Seymour, Anne's lady-in-waiting. On May 2nd, 1536, while watching a tennis match at the now demolished Greenwich Palace, Anne was arrested, convicted of adultery, treason and incest. Anne arrived at the Tower of London at 5 p.m. that day. She entered via the Queen's stairs. Now, even though she was being held prisoner, she was still the Queen, so she was held in the royal apartments where she had last stayed 3 years prior for her coronation. On May 15, 1536, Anne's trial took place in front of an estimated 2,000 spectators. The jury was made up of her enemies, and part of the jury was also her uncle, the Duke of Norfolk. The Queen defended herself, denying all of these preposterous charges and only admitting to giving money to Sir Francis Weston, just as she gave money to many young men in the court. She was then stripped of her crown and her title, and her uncle, the Duke of Norfolk, pronounced the sentence.
Thou shalt be burned here within the tower, or else to have thy head smitten off, as the King's pleasure shall be further known of this matter.
Anne continued to stay calm and kept composed, even though now she was sentenced to death. May 19, 1536, the day that Anne had been dreading, had arrived, her execution. It had already been postponed once from May 18th to May 19th due to the late arrival of the French executioner. Anne's hopes for mercy had risen, thinking the king had changed his mind, only to find out it had been rescheduled for the day after. Her last night at the Tower must have been awful for Anne, for little to no sleep. Normally in a situation like this, you would think that Anne would be distressed, but it's thought that she was actually keeping calm and actually making jokes, saying the words, "I only have a little neck."
I only have a little neck.
Which seems she had made peace with her fate. At 8:50 a.m, Anne was escorted through the grounds to the scaffold. Waiting for her there was a crowd of roughly 1,000 people. Anne must have felt absolutely petrified. Amongst that crowd was her uncle, the Duke of Norfolk, the Duke of Richmond, the Mayor of London, and many other lords, nobles and heirs. She remained calm and dignified, giving her last looks to the people around her and asking for permission to speak. When granted, she said her famous last words,
Good Christian people, I am come hither to die, for according to the law, and by the law I am judged to die, to accuse no man, nor to speak anything of that whereof I am accused and condemned to die. But I pray God save the King, and send him long to reign over me. For gentler, nor more merciful prince was there never. And to me was he ever good, a gentle and a sovereign lord. And if any person will meddle of my cause, I require them to judge best, and thus I take my leave of the world, and of you all. And I heartily desire you all to pray for me.
Her ladies prepared her for death. She thanked them and forgave the headsman for his services, handing him the sack of coins. She knelt down and began whispering her prayers under her breath. Her ladies placed a blindfold over her eyes, and the fear was now evident in her face as she awaited her death. The executioner swung his sword and... Anne's head fell onto the scaffold, her ladies immediately covering her with a white cloth, allowing no man to touch her. Her head and body were placed in an empty arrow chest, and she was buried here at the chapel at the Tower of London. Anne Boleyn suffered great sadness through her short life, but it is known that she was a brave, smart and courageous woman who changed history forever.